and because so many other government services are being cut. The people left in the lurch have looked to the library, where kind, knowledgeable, and professional help them navigate the government bureaucracy, apply for benefits, access social services. Public officials will tell you they love libraries and they are committed to them. They just don't believe they constitute a core service. But if you visit libraries, you will see an essential service in action. As librarians help people who don't have other ways to get online, can't get the answers they urgently need, or simply need a safe place to bring their children. I've stood in the parking lot of the Topeka and Shawnee County Library in Kansas on a Sunday morning and watched families pour through doors and head in all directions to do homework, attend computer classes, and read newspapers. I've stood outside New York City libraries waiting for the doors to open and give access to a warm and affordable place to work. I've met librarians who serve as interpreters and guides to communities of cancer survivors, Polish-speaking citizens, teenage filmmakers, veterans. The people who welcome us to the library are idealists who believe that accurate information leads to good decisions and that exposure to the intellectual riches of civilization leads to a better world. The next Abraham Lincoln could be sitting in their library, teaching himself all he needs to know to save the country. While they help us get online, employed and informed, librarians don't try to sell anything. Nor do they turn around and broadcast our problems, send us spam, or keep a record of our interests and needs. Because no matter how savvy this profession is at navigating the online world, it clings to that old-fashioned value, privacy. A profession dedicated to privacy, in charge of our public computers. That's brilliant. They represent the best civic value out there, an army of resourceful workers that can help us compete in this world. But instead of putting such conscientious, economical, service-oriented professionals to work helping us, we're handing them pink slips. The school libraries, the public libraries in which we've invested decades and even centuries of resources will disappear unless we fight for them within our communities. That treasure in our communities, and we have to support the libraries that will have an unidentifiable or undeniable competitive advantage with those libraries. Those that don't will watch in envy as the Darien Library in Connecticut hosts networking breakfasts for its out-of-work patrons, and tiny Gilpin County Public Library in Colorado beckons patrons with a sign of promises for free coffee, internet, notary, phone, smiles, restroom, and ideas. Those lucky enough to live in those towns or have high-speed internet service and on-call technical assistance will not notice the effect of a diminished public library system, not at first. Whizzes who can whittle down 15 million hits on a Google search to find the useful and accurate bits of info, and those able to buy any book or article or film they want will escape the immediate consequences of these cuts. Those in cities that haven't preserved their libraries, those less fortunate and baffled by technology, and our children will be the first to suffer. But sooner or later, we'll all feel the loss of one of the most effective levelers of privilege and avenues of reinvention, one of the great engines of democracy as it begins to disappear, our library. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Yes, Andy.
I would kind of like to go back and address the report by the comptroller and the $1,800,000 in engineering fees.
Yes, sir.
In listening to your reading off of the engineering fees, I noticed about $800,000 of those fees that actually pertain to some of the special districts that are, one, going to be the town will be reimbursed for some of those engineering fees, like Chazen, which is working on Spring House. Okay, Severn Trent, which operates our water districts, which is paid for by the water district, which is not paid for by the taxpayers at large. All right, so you had about $500,000 in Severn Trent, you had about $200,000 in Chazen, you had Peach Lake, and I can't remember, what some of the other ones were, but in the quick mathematics of it was approximately half of your gravy train really was essential services that are being provided to residents of this community, and most of which is being paid for by a minute part of the community, and a lot of which is being reimbursed through bond resolutions in which the town is going to recollect some of that money. So in sitting there and saying that we're throwing away $1,800,000 because there are no RFPs, and I love RFPs. I've been on both sides of them, okay? I've answered them as a contractor when I was in the city, and I believe in them, all right? But to make the blanket statement that RFPs are going to save the world when most of the funds that we're expending have no relationship to RFPs, okay? And if you got to Chazen without an RFP, I fault you, and you, and you, because you guys were around the last few years, okay? That was one point, okay? Another is, be that any increase in anybody's budget, 2% for any employee. I'm a disabled veteran, okay? I live on my disability, and in 2009, in 2010 and 2011, the government has determined that there is no cost of living increase, okay, for veterans or for Social Security. And I think that should be well noted when you make your deliberations about your, and I have no problem with employees getting increases for raises for merit and stuff like that. But, I think we're in a situation that, warrants looking at this in light of what's really going on in the world. And to help the people in the public library, I was online today to the library. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thanks, Andy. Andy, to speak. Thanks, Andy. Andy, to speak briefly to your point, in reply, what the comptroller noted was $1.8 million in a place without competition, and whether they're picking your pocket in a special district or they're picking your pocket in a town-wide district, it's all the same, Andy. It's your pocket, mine. It's being picked. What the comptroller is demanding, what I'm demanding, Councilman Yee and others, we're demanding that, as other communities do, we place these public awards out for public competitive process.
But you're paying, but the process is, yes, that's a good panacea. Let's send everything out to an RFP. Okay? How did we get these people in the first place? Can you tell me how we got Chazen? Can you tell me how we got Severn Trent?
Yes. No,
Yeah.
from years back, I inherited those firms.
They were RFPs years back, okay?
In
then
many instances,
yes, they were
in some
continued, but
instances,
they were
yes.
also continued in your administration.
In most, no, Andy. And with respect to what the comptroller found, again, if we want to look at 3 for which there were RFPs, is that a fig leaf for 8? When we're talking for 8 for which there was no public competitive process.
Yes, I agree.
On $1.8 million, that's
And what
wrong.
the comptroller did was look at a set of numbers, okay? And he did not look at where those numbers apply. And like you're using those numbers, you're using the debit side, you're not using the credit side. You have to balance a budget, you must use the debit side, you must use the credit side. You got to say where that money is coming from. We have, when you put out something like for Chazen or for Severn Trent to represent the district, yeah, I agree, it's my money. But you put it on my back, you haven't put it on their backs, okay? You've told me I have to pay for it. You haven't told me, that I can choose, you chose. You chose Chazen, you chose Severn Trent, I didn't. Remember that.
Andy, on this report, it says the town paid 13 professional service providers approximately $1.92 million during our audit period. We selected and tested 11 of the town's highest-paid professional service providers who received approximately $1.9 million during our audit period. Just to remind everyone, the audit period was from January '09 until February of this year, all right, or March, right. The board did not use competition to select 8 of the 11 vendors who received payments totaling $1.8 million. Services obtained without competition included, and then they listed. But here's something that's important. Without a comprehensive policy and detailed guidance or written procedures supporting the town's procurement policy, the board does not have reasonable assurance that goods and services are procured in a cost-effective manner. The town is not legally required to competitively bid when procuring professional services during the competition, such as using RFP process or obtaining quotes, is an effective way to ensure that the town receives the desired services for the most favorable terms. The appropriate use of competition provides taxpayers the greatest assurance that services are procured in the most prudent and economical manner without favoritism. I'm not an auditor. The auditor sent us this report. I have been saying these things since day one. I finally have someone to back up it in writing for me. So whether it's an RFP that you agree or don't agree upon, whether it's an engineering firm that we've had for 30-plus years, I don't know if it had an RFP back there 30 years ago.
I'm not talking about 30 years ago.
The auditor is telling us that we need to get these services and goods so we know what the best prices are. Okay. And my concern is if we can put it out at today's market, especially today's market, we could probably, hopefully, look for a 20% savings across the board, which then, as the supervisor mentioned, could help fund some of the programs that we may be losing in the near future.
Thank you.
And I think you're very specifically reading what you want to read and what you want us to hear. And like I said, you can take a set of numbers and skew them any way you want and tell them any way you want. You are not using, the comptroller was looking at expenditures. He wasn't looking at where the money was coming from. This is not taxpayer. This is not town-wide taxpayer dollars that you're spending, okay?
Thanks, Andy.
And Andy, it's important that you know that we actually, I did, and Councilmember Cullen and Councilmember Gross, because I believe that it's important that we know what you're saying, not just throw out a figure. And that's why it was a draft confidential report, because under the circumstances, we had a right, or at least, you know, the town board had a right to respond. So, of course, what we did, we asked Ron Hund, who is our town accountant, to please explain about all of these costs. And like what you're saying, you know, anyone who has done simple bookkeeping knows there's the credit and the debit. Well, I have a breakdown of engineering and planning costs for 2009 from the accountant. Nathan Jacobson, General Town Services, there's your $43,800.62. Revenue source taxes. How about this one? Stormwater drainage. That was paid to Nate Jacobson. $26,345.03. That came from Putnam County EOH funds. I don't know. Was the comptroller told by the supervisor that that came from town taxpayers? Was he told that, or the comptroller told that it came from Putnam County EOH funds? I don't know. I do know that in our response to the comptroller, because what happened was, I believe the supervisor has already given a response. The state comptroller has asked for another response because apparently it didn't really address what was in the report, but that's another day. Pending planning projects, $35,601.81. That comes from escrow from developers. Approved planning projects, listen to this one, $32,112.45. Where does that come from? Where do those monies come and go to Nate Jacobson? Inspection fees. I think we spoke about that earlier with Mr. O'Rourke. Recreation facilities, $18,031.33. Recreation subdivision fees. Only one taxpayer fee here. Chazen Engineering, special districts, $226,999.86. District